Hey, everybody, this is Gary Kay, and you're obviously watching a special video version of my Rants and Raves podcast, joined with a great friend in the industry, Paul Harris, CEO of Aurora Multimedia. Paul, how are you?
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, yeah, hey, every year. I enjoy talking to you because you say the truth. So we're at Aurora Multimedia, obviously, for years, started out as a control company, has expanded significantly, and is probably most known for signal routing and distribution and converters and connections and things like that. And obviously one of the early adopters, if not the earliest, of SDVoE AV over IP technology, but you also have the whole family of AV over IP products. Kind of give me an update of where Aurora is and what you plan on launching next week at ISE.
Yeah, so ISE, exciting show, as you know. It's grown over the years, and I think they're going to probably do over 70,000 people this year. So it's an exciting show. It's grown a lot. So this year we're going to be showing actually quite a lot of products. The first thing we're going to be showing is our new ReAX. We introduced it at InfoComm. ReAX spelled R-E-A-X. It is an open source based control engine, which at some point we're going to turn over and create it into its own organization and let our competitors, believe it or not, use the same code base, which is JavaScript. And yeah, it will create code interoperability, macro interoperability, IR interoperability, and so on.
Yeah, so, and I read a recent release that this is like version technically like 1.5 that you're going to have at ISE. Is that right?
No, not that I'm aware of. It's the first official release of it. At InfoComm, we just said it's coming. Now we're showing it's real.
Okay.
So
now you actually have the finished product. Or
something. Oh, yeah. This is going to be a touch panel running the engine. The interesting thing about this touch panel is, aside from its cost point, is we're going to show that we could run the engine on Windows, Linux, and Android. So it's multi-OS platform. And this particular touch panel, we're going to show people that you don't have to mount panels like this. You can actually mount them like this. Mm-hmm. It's the way everybody operates things. You want to put a preview screen up on here, controls go below. Eliminates the right versus left.
Yeah.
So it solves problems. It has its own appeal, and plus everybody's used to holding a phone in portrait mode. Why not mount your touch panels and treat it in a portrait mode? So we'll be showing a 7 and a 10-inch panel.
So ReAX is finished, and it's available now, and you'll show the finished product at ISE, and you're also, it looks like you're going to show some touch panels. Yeah,
it's going to be 2 ReAX touch panels. That's not just a touch panel, that's a brain.
Okay.
Anything that's got a ReAX engine in it becomes a brain.
Okay.
So
the sizes of the 2 control panels are what?
7-inch and a 10-inch.
So that's basically an all-in-one software. It's a control system that's also a touch panel all-in-one, basically.
Oh, yeah. So if I connect that to somebody as one of our AV over IPs or some other brand, hopefully ours, it'll immediately go out, automate, parse, whatever you do with any other control system on the market. The only difference is we'll have tools which are drag and drop in WYSIWYGs for, we call it Core Studio. Mm-hmm. And that allows you to generate the code if you don't know how to write code. And if you want to write it in JavaScript, write it in JavaScript. It doesn't matter. It's all open.
So then what else are you going to show? Like, what about hardware-wise?
That is hardware, but we're going to show 2 new controllers, 2 new controller boxes, really low cost, the RX-C3 and the RX-C1. We're going to show also a new server brain version of it, which is going to be an RXS-1. Yeah, it's a tongue twister. We just gave up on trying to come up with part numbers. We just said, look, it makes sense. ReAX server, RXS1. Try saying it over the phone, but it'll make an interesting conversation. So that's the server version, which is based on an Intel i5 processor, industrial grade and fanless powerhouse, designed to just plow through and control with a one box an entire facility.
But still all using JavaScript. All
JavaScript based, serves up web pages, whatever you need, mobile, non-mobile, can control 1 room, can control 100 rooms, doesn't matter. Wow. So it's that's the server base. Plus, it works with our IPBaseT server to control and automate all of our AV over IP products and keep track of them. It just kind of comes with it because that's also Linux-based or runs on Windows as well. So we're very big into web server-based technologies. We always have.
So you mentioned the IPBaseT stuff. So just so that there's some clarification here, because you're pushing the IPBaseT thing, which you're the only company that has that, I think.
That's correct.
But then you have also the AV over IP stuff. Explain the differences between the two.
Okay, so IPBaseT, yeah, we own the trademarks for it. It's our thing. all IP-based T really is. It's not a compression. It's not some crazy thing. It's really more of a protocol of the concept of unifying different standards to create the illusion of synergy. So in other words, when we were the first company to ever do Dante with video. That we did it over 4 years ago with SDVOE, as a matter of fact. And then we eventually brought it into the 1 gig realm shortly after. So that was our first demonstration of showing how we can use Dante with some other totally different methodology, make them over the same pipeline, still control it through a single pipeline as far as the way we automate and talk to it, but yet it still has its own mechanisms and their own advantages for what you're using it for. So Dante, obviously lower bandwidth specific to the audio realm, and then obviously the video part for the video realm. So it's not really so much about a specific technology. It's more about a protocol and an illusion of making it simpler to just keep adding it. Everybody has this argument in the industry where, oh, my 1 gig's better. Oh, my 10 gig's better. Oh, nah. They're all good. They all have a purpose. And I always tell people the application will determine what is necessary for the product. And that's really what it comes down to. So you need all of them. You need 10, 100. You do need the 1 gig and you need the 10 gig. So there's not one best solution. There are best within the category of the bandwidth you're going after. But there is a certain reason why we have the different variety. And the key is when you do it, you got to create it. When you create the boxes, they all got to look like they're the same. When you create the protocols, they got to look like they're the same. And that's really what it's about.
Yeah, so basically what you're saying is the application is going to determine whether you use H.264 or 10 gig or 1 gig, but ultimately the way they're controlled and managed needs to be the same, because otherwise you're going to overcomplicate the system is what you're basically saying.
Exactly. You don't want to do something different because it's the 10-100 versus it's the 1 gig versus it's the 10 gig. They could be different compression engines. You can always bridge them together. But when you're controlling them, when you're trying to see what's on the network and what you want to send to where, it's got to be a unified environment. You don't want to make this more complicated than it needs to be.
You know, you always keep up with what's going on in the industry. And as you know, yesterday,
I know we go with this already.
Dante came out with the Dante AV, quote unquote standard, but they've added one capability of 1 gig over the Dante network. And the way I read it was a little confusing. It looked like they were introducing a hardware piece, but they are kind of as a reference design. But really what it seemed like they were actually doing was just adding an Ethernet port that has the capability of having, if you connect a decoder to it, you can send up to 1 gig AV over IP as long as it doesn't use more than 800 megabit.
No, that's not what it is.
Okay. Then tell me what it is. I can understand.
And I'll be able to educate everybody even more at ISE, because we are going to get more information as it comes. But I did have the pleasure of talking to them. I do think it's great if they pull this off. They got a huge install base there. Yeah. It can in some ways unify the 1 gig market. And would I possibly jump on board with it? Yeah, very well. If it makes sense and it looks like it's in the right direction, sure, why not? It could be another.
Then tell me how it works, because I read it looked like you still have a bandwidth limitation though, not 1 gig, but you can't drive it higher than 800 megabit. Is that right? Or 750?
No, I don't think that's so much. I think they were describing that they're using an Intopix technology.
They are using Intopix.
They're using Intopix.
Okay.
Which is just
that's a reference design. They're not building that board. That's a reference design for others to build, right?
Well, I think what they're doing that's different is it's all about the way they clock. So it's about the Dante mechanism and the protocols and the communications and their Dante manager. So at the core of it, yes, they're taking I think what they're really trying to say, and take what I'm saying right now at about 80-90%, because I myself still need a little bit more information. But from what I've understood so far, is they're going with JPEG 2000, which is Intopix. They've aligned it with their protocols and their Dante standards of clocking. So you follow their network and their methodologies, their auto discoveries, and all the stuff you normally do for Dante, and all their tools. That's the key element of what they're showing here. Okay. And then this development board is an FPGA, just like everybody else is using. It will, yes, as a manufacturer, we will have to use our development kit, make products out of it. I'm still waiting to see where our cost targets are going to be with this thing. I really have no idea what that's going to be yet, because that's going to determine viability as well. And I do know it's going to support, the 232, the IR, and USB HID devices. I do know that it's going to support, obviously, the video and the audio as given at 4K 6444. It will support video wall modes, seamless switching, scaling, and potentially and eventually windowing. So it's got the typical complement of features that people are expecting out of it. Now, how much of that dirty work do we have to do as a manufacturer ourselves to get that up and running? That, I guess, we have to see. From what I also understand, I don't think we're going to be seeing it actually shipping till maybe closer to the end of the year.
Yeah.
So that's at least what I've been told and the way they're portraying it. But you got to start somewhere, and it does create an interesting excitement. So we're keeping our eye on it. We're not saying it's going to be the end-all answer, but they got a good shot. You know, they dominate a lot of the market.
So I want to turn my attention to the high end of AV over IP, which is SDVOE. Obviously, if you're wanting no compression or very little compression, I should say, truly visual lossless, then you have to go 10 gigs. So the applications are sort of within a room, or you're sending high bandwidth content. Do you see that? At what point in time do you sort of see? Because right now you have H.264 is pretty. It's been around a while. Everyone's using it for streaming. Anytime you don't need synchronous video with the live content, that's the way to go. 1 gig is still sort of figuring out exactly where it fits in the market. But obviously with SVSI and companies like that having shipped a long time, and companies like you who've been making products a long time in the 1 gig space, there are a lot of companies playing there. And then in SDVOE, it's really the only, quote, standard. I use that term carefully, standard for high bandwidth. Where do you think all this is going to fall at? And don't you think, or do you think 2019 will be sort of a year where things get determined more, or we get closer to some identity of where things are going to happen?
Nah, it's going to be 3 more years.
3, okay.
Yeah, I don't think
3 more
it's
years
gonna
of
happen.
Confusion?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they could be confused with Aurora products. Let's be clear about that, okay?
So the idea
is, if you're going to be confused, everybody, be confused with Aurora, okay?
So the idea is what the integrator needs to do, because they're not all interoperable, obviously, that you need to pick, you need to go with the companies that you're using that you feel like can handle the entire ecosystem rather than piecemeal. Is that kind of what you're saying there? Because in your case, like, you have to deal with, in typical system, you're having to deal with signal routing and distribution and control and management after the fact.
Yep.
Most people aren't going to do this point to point.
Yeah, exactly. Well, here's what I think, and this is my predictions. I know you got your predictions, and actually I like a lot of your predictions because I'm in agreement with a lot of them. I do think this, and I was guilty of this too. I don't think, do not discount HDBaseT. I think there's going to be a period of the hybrid where people are going to hybrid HDBaseT 3000 series with the AV over IP, regardless of whether it's 1 gig or 10 gig. I think there'll be different things.
Kind of running in parallel.
They're going to work in together with each other. And the reason why that's going to happen is HDBaseT's 3000 series can handle 16 gigabits per second of data bandwidth. Now, when you take out all the nonsense out of the 18 gigs of HDMI 2.0, 16 gigs will deliver the full payload. So what's going to happen is they can deliver uncompressed, 0 latency of HDMI now with their new chip generation that's going to be on the market eventually. Once that happens, forget about playing games. They got 16 gigs over that same cat cable going 100 meters. So that really changes a little bit of the dynamics of do I compress, do I not compress, and the price point. You could still stay at an HDBaseT price point to deliver that type of quality without going to the complexities and the heat and all the other things you get with the SDVOEs and the other companies that are out there pitching their expensive 1 gig solutions that generate a lot of heat. So I would not count them out. I think that they are going to stay around for quite some time, but you're going to see a bridging of technologies where you start bolting on to get it out of the room. So in the room, HDBaseT. Out of the room, the IP. You keep the cleanest, clearest image inside the room. And then once you go out, okay, if they get a little bit of degradation, so what? They're outside the room.
And they don't have a reference.
Exactly.
They don't have a reference to what the original source was.
Exactly. And I think ultimately we need to somebody do a full bi-direction like we showed with HDBaseT IP almost 2 years ago, where you can go both directions over a single pipeline. People forget, when you say a 10 gig connection, it goes both ways, not just one way.
Yeah.
So you need to get that bandwidth in the other direction. So this way, when you do link up the rooms, you get your transmit and receive over that same one pipeline, which will further reduce the cost and simplify the install. So I do see that eventually coming. I've talked about it, so I'm sure somebody out there is listening to me. And plus, we've personally worked on the first one that ever did something like that with Valens. So don't count those guys out. We're going to be making products with it. I think it's going to have its own place. SDVOE is going to continue to grow. They got some tricks up their sleeves, which I can't go into. But as we get towards the end of the year, keep an eye on those guys. They're going to make it difficult. I know there's a lot of other larger companies out there. They're touting their new technologies and causing all sorts of market, wizardry and hoo-ha. At the end of the day, you're going to have 40, 50 companies against one proprietary technology. And at the end of the day, and history's proven it, many companies always beat the one company in what they're trying to pitch. So this is another big thing we're going to be doing at ISE. We're going to be releasing on Tuesday of next week our latest truth video. I can't tell you what the title of it is yet, but you can imagine what we're targeting. There are some people stating that they ended the 1 gig versus 10 gig debate. And we're going to demonstrate that, it's ended and 10 gig wins in that category. So we'll have an interesting take and dispel all the nonsense that's going on out there. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think I do, but I think the company you're referring to only has a 1 gig product. So
that is correct.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I look, your videos are always fun to watch, and I always enjoy talking to you because, like you said, you don't always agree with me, and I like your perspective on things. So I appreciate that. Paul Harris, CEO of Aurora Multimedia. Of course, you can see that. You can see them at auroramultimedia.com. They'll be at ISE along with us. We'll all be at ISE next week in Amsterdam. We're excited to all be heading to the show. And hey, Paul, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I just want to give one little plug. As soon as I find the booth number, I want to plug my booth number because what's the point if we can't? It's I guess stand, actually, I hope that's right. But yeah, stand S-S85. So Hall 5, S85 is our booth number. We'll be showing why we're the most advanced AV over IP products for the 1 gig and the 10 gig, as well as our new HDBaseT and our new ReAX engine. So we got a lot of stuff to show there. Oh, one last plug, by the way. We're going to show the world's first PoE 8-port splitter, which does all CEC control individually and will downscale per port to 1080p to make it match within the system that it's distributing to.
Yeah, I wrote that up. I wrote that story up the other day. So
oh, you did? Okay, I haven't had a chance to see it yet.
Yeah. You mentioned that. So that is going to be interesting. Again, as you said, Hall 5, booth S85 or stand S85. Paul Harris, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you very much. Of course, see all of our ISE coverage. Go to raypubs.com/ISE2019.